Today we're going to be looking at Lesson 5 in our book, and that lesson actually is labeled Creating Letters and Envelopes. The reality is what we're going to be talking about in this particular lesson is we're going to talk about adjusting indents and setting tabs, and then we will eventually talk just a little bit about envelopes. Specifically, the topics include adjusting the indent settings of our paragraphs. Then we're going to add a variety of different tabs to our document. We're going to talk about a left tab, a center tab, a right tab, and even something called a bar tab. We're then going to add a watermark to our document. And then finally, we will wrap up by creating an envelope from an existing letter that has been created for us. In Lesson 5, we're going to need to open some files. And the first file we're going to open is on page 118. So if you will come up here to your page number and go to page 118, pressing the Enter key, here you will see the first file that we need to open. Be aware the file is on the right side of the page as opposed to where it normally is on the left side. So we're going to click and open this doc file. Opening this file up in Microsoft Word. As we always do, we need to enable the editing. And then finally, we're going to save this file to our computer. So we're going to go to File, Save As. If the folder name already exists over here, go ahead and click on that. If not, go to My Documents. Create the folder if necessary using the New Folder button. Or double-click on the folder that already has today's date. The file W05 try A already exists. We need to simply add a dash and then our initials after that file. And I click Save. With the file open, we're going to talk about increasing and decreasing the amount of space for our indents in our document. On this particular exercise, we're going to start off by selecting the second paragraph. And in the second paragraph, what we would like to do is indent the entire paragraph by 1 inch. Now, I am assuming that the ruler is open. If the ruler is not open, we need to get that open. I'll give you a moment to get that open. Hopefully you went to the View tab and clicked on the ruler. Now that that ruler is open, we want to set the indent by 1 inch, meaning that I want these items to start at this 1 inch mark. The way we're going to do that is by using the button on the ribbon called Increase Indent. It is in the paragraph group. It's got an arrow pointing to the right and it says Increase Indent. Every time you press this button, it will indent the text by 1/2 of an inch. So if I want to indent this by a full inch, I'm going to need to click this button 2 times in order to increase the indent to 1 inch. Now that we're viewing this indented by 1 inch, we realize that it's a bit too much indentation, so we want to back it up a little bit. And so to do that, we're going to use the button right next to the one that we just used. This one is magically called Decrease Indent. And as you can see, the arrow points to the left, so we will click on that button 1 time, and just as the increase indent moved in by 1/2 an inch each time, the decrease indent moves out by 1/2 an inch each time. The next setting change we're going to apply to both paragraphs. So we're going to select both the first and the second paragraph. And here what we want to do is we want to set a very specific left indent that is not on the 1/2 inch increment. So we want to set it to 1.2 inches. Well, I can't really do that using the increase and decrease indent buttons. So what we need to do instead is in the same group, this was in the paragraph group, in the same group that these buttons were in, to get more and additional settings, I'm going to go to the paragraph settings dialog box by clicking on this arrow in the bottom right corner. Here I can adjust the indent of the selected paragraphs. And as I stated a moment ago, I want to set this to 1.2 inches. So I'm just clicking in this left indent option and typing in 1.2. Now while we're here, the book would also like us to change the right indent. The right indent means how far from the right margin will the text be allowed to come. In this particular activity, we're going to set this to a 0.8 setting, so a right indent of 0.8. I'm going to type in 1.2, and then I'm going to do the double quote, okay, in order to tell it that it's inches. And there we are at the 1.2 inch mark. That looks correct. So 1.2 inches on the left, 0.8 inches on the right. Well, we're going to do a similar setting, but this time we're going to apply it to the third paragraph. And in this case, they want to do the left indent to 0.4 and the right indent to 0.6. So going into the paragraph dialog box, the left indent of 0.4 and the right indent of 0.6. I'm going to click OK. In this particular paragraph, the third paragraph, what we wish to do is we want to set this first line indent. Now you want to pay attention to this because I have seen this on the test on a number of occasions over the years, and that is setting what's called a first line indent. I only want the first line indented, not all the others, like you see here. Going to the paragraph dialog box, we're going to go to this special setting. This special setting allows me to adjust only the first line. In a minute we'll talk about that hanging indent that you saw in there as well. So we're going to set the first line indent, and they want to actually adjust that to be 0.8 inches. So the left indent is going to be 0.4, but the first line will actually be indented by 0.4 plus 0.8, so it should be indented to 1.2 when we're done with this. When I click OK, sure enough, that first line is indented to the same setting as the other two paragraphs. The second paragraph they wish to adjust using what's called a hanging indent. So we're going to select the second paragraph, go back into the paragraph dialog box, and on this one we're going to set the left indent to 0.4, but we're going to set a hanging indent. The hanging indent is where the first line will continue to be right all the way to the left indentation, so it'll be all the way over to that 0.4 setting, but all the other lines in this particular paragraph will be indented in, and they want to set that additional indent, that hanging indent, to 0.8. So I click OK, and again, the left indent for the first line is set to a mere 0.4 inches, but all the other lines in this particular paragraph are set to a hanging indent. So this is an example of a hanging indent, and this is an example of a first line indent. You will want to save that file W05 try A. Go ahead and save and close that file, and we're going to move on to the next file. The next file we actually are going to open in Word. So in Word, we're going to do a File, New to create a new blank document, and this will be our try B file. So I'm going to go ahead and save this file. File, Save As. I'm going to go to my computer. I'm going to go to the dated folder, and I'm going to save this as W05 try B and then my initials. Again, the file name W05 try B. And I'm going to save that file to my dated folder. The next thing we're going to talk about is tab settings. So with this new document open, we're going to go ahead and create a tab. In order to do this and actually to see the work that we are doing, you do need to have your Show Hide button turned on. So if you will, please come up and click on the Show Hide button so that you'll be able to see the tabs that we set up. Alright, in our document, we're going to go ahead and press the Tab key, which is signified by the arrow on the screen. Once we do that, we're going to go ahead and type in our name. Now, you will notice that the first tab ended up at the ½ mark. By default, the tabs are every ½ inch. So if I were to press tab twice, it would be moved in by 1 inch. It's really not the best practice to hit the tab key multiple times if I'm trying to move something in. I know it's something that's commonly done, but the best way to do this is to actually set the tab at the appropriate spot. The way you set a tab is by clicking on the ruler, but first we need to choose what kind of tab we're going to set. Over on this left-hand side, you will see this button that kind of looks like a capital L. This button right here indicates a left tab. In fact, if you point at it, it says left tab. That is exactly what I want to insert here. So I want to go ahead and do the left tab at the 1 inch point. So what I'm going to do on my ruler is I'm going to click at that number 1. Now if you click on that number 1 and nothing happens, probably what happened is you clicked too high on the ruler. You've got to click in the lower half of the ruler in order for it to actually set the tab at that 1 inch mark. And once you do that, it will then move your name over to that 1 inch mark on the ruler. Click after your name. Okay, so after your name. And what we're going to do next is we are going to create a center tab. A center tab works much like the left tab, except the text itself will be centered at its location. So the way I switch from a left tab to a center tab is I'm going to come over here on the left-hand side. I'm going to click on this button that right now says left tab, and it changes. This upside down T that you see is indeed a center tab. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come over to my ruler. I want this center tab to go at the 4 inch mark. So I'm going to click on that 4, again in the lower half of that ribbon. In my document now, I'm going to go ahead and press the tab key, and you will see that my cursor now moves to that 4 inch mark. What I'm going to type are the letters MS for Microsoft, Word 2013. And when I type that, you will see that that text is centered at that 4 inch mark, meaning some of the text went to the left of it, some of it went to the right of that tab stop. I'm going to press the Enter key and go to a new line. And on this new line, we want to create a right tab at the 3 inch mark. So we've looked at the left tab, we've looked at the center tab. Clicking on this button over here on the left-hand side of the screen again, it looks like a backward L. That backward L is a right tab. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and I want to place this right tab at the 3-inch mark. So I'm going to take my mouse, I'm going to click here at the 3-inch mark. That puts the right tab in place. Now when I press the tab key on my keyboard, it tabs first of all. The first stop that it came to was that 1-inch tab that we had set before. And then we're going to press the tab key again, and it's going to come to that 3-inch mark. Here we're going to type in just your last name. The next tab we're going to set is called a decimal tab. The decimal tab is used whenever you're typing numbers that are going to have decimal points, and you want those decimal points to line up from one line to the next. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this tab selector one more time, and you'll see what looks like a center tab. It's an upside down T, but the difference is there's a dot in there. And as you point your mouse at it, you will indeed see the decimal tab. This decimal tab we're going to go ahead and place at the 5-inch mark. So I'm going to go ahead and click at that 5-inch mark. On my screen here, I'm at the end of my name here. I'm going to press the tab key. Now when I hit the tab key the first time, it's going to line up with that original center tab that we set up originally. I'm going to press the tab key again. That's going to line me up with that 5-inch mark. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in the $sign. The $sign is the shifted 4, followed by the numbers 1, 2, 3, which notice that those numbers went to the left of where we tabbed to. Now I'm going to type in the period, and I'm going to type in the number 7, 5. Those numbers went to the right of where we tabbed, meaning that the tab actually is lining everything up at that decimal point, which is why they call that the decimal tab. The last tab that we're going to put in is called a bar tab. Over here on the left-hand side, I'm on the decimal tab. I'm going to click one more time. I see this vertical line that goes up and down. That vertical line will form a bar at the point where the tab is set. So here in my second line, I'm going to go ahead and click on that 6-inch mark, and I will see a vertical bar appearing at that 6-inch mark. I'm now going to press the Enter key, and that's going to go to a new line, and notice that that bar automatically extended down to the next line. Alright, we looked at a way to set those tabs using the ribbon and using the ruler. There is another way that you can set the tabs, and that is by going into the paragraph dialog box. On the paragraph group, you can come right here to the paragraph dialog box opener. That opens up my dialog box, and in the bottom left corner there is the option for tabs. And here you will see the 6 tabs that we had set up to this point. I want to clear those tabs out, so I'm going to click on each one of these items, and I'm going to say, actually, to make this quick, I'm going to hit clear all, and that will remove all the tabs. Now do understand that that's only going to affect the line I'm on and down. So it's not going to change anything that took place before that unless I had selected those 2 lines of text. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and as you can see on the ruler, there are no tabs that are currently set. Now that we've had some practice with tabs, let's go ahead and clear everything out that's in this document. I'm going to take my mouse and I'm going to select everything in the document, and on my keyboard I'm going to press the delete key. That removes the information from the document. Notice there are no tabs here because we've deleted everything out. Now, what I want to do is I want to demonstrate how I might set up something like a table of contents using my tab settings. So, Let's type in table of contents. Press the Enter key to go to the next line. This is going to be Chapter 1. Pressing Enter again, I'm going to type in Part A. Press Enter again, Part B. Press Enter again, in Chapter 2. And then I'm going to press Enter one last time. So I've got some basic items in here. First thing let's do is let's format the table of contents. I'm going to select Table of Contents. And using some tools that we've used before, we're going to go ahead and turn this into a title style. And I want to center the text. Now, I'm going to select Chapter 1. And what I want to do is I want to put some space above Chapter 1. So we're going to go to the Paragraph dialog box. And where it says spacing, right now the before setting is set to 0. I'm going to change that to 24. So I'm adding 24 points of space above Chapter 1. Now I want to set some tabs. Typically, in a table of contents, you're going to have tab settings to where you're going to see a page number appear on the right side of the page. So what I'm going to do is I want to get a right tab. So I'm going to click on my tab setting button over here till I see the right tab. And I'm going to set that right tab at the 6-inch mark. Alright, I click after Chapter 1. I now press the Tab key on my keyboard, and I'm going to type in a page number. Let's say this is on page 2. What I'd like to talk about is what you typically will see in a book. In a book, you don't typically see big white space between the chapter title and where the number 2 goes. What do you normally see there? Hopefully you answered periods or dots going across. Well, those periods or dots are what are called a tab leader. If you will, please select Chapter 1, that entire line. And for this, we need to go into the dialog box. So I'm going to go to the Paragraph dialog box opener, go into my tab settings, and here's my 6-inch tab. What I want to do is I want to add what's called a tab leader. So I'm going to click this number 2 right here, and what that's going to do is that is going to create periods or dots that appear across the page. I click Set, I click OK, and there are my dots that go across the page to my 6-inch tab. Now, I'm going to select the next 3 items separately, because what I'm going to want to do is for the Part A, Part B, I actually want those indented a little bit. So I'm going to go and get my left tab. Actually, let's do this in the dialog box since we're going to need a leader anyway. So I'm going to go into the Paragraph dialog box, the tab settings. The first tab, which is where Part A and Part B, I want to indent these just a little bit, about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to do 0.25, and I'm going to set a simple left tab at that point. Next, I want to set my 6-inch tab that will be a right tab, but it will have a tab leader of periods. So type in a 6, choose the right tab set, choose the number 2 for tab leaders. That's going to put the periods in there, and we're going to set that option. When I click OK, we should now be ready to go ahead and use our tabs to format this. I'm going to click in front of Part A, In order to indent this by a 1/4 inch, I'm going to press the Tab key, and that should move part A in by a 1/4 inch. Clicking after the part A, I now want to put the page number, so I'm going to press the Tab key. That moves me across. Part A also begins on page 2. I click in front of part B. I press the Tab key to indent that by a 1/4 inch. Click after the B, press Tab, and part B starts on page 4. So I type in a 4. And then finally, chapter 2, just like chapter 1, I want it to be flush left, so I'm going to not hit the tab in front of it. I'm going to click after the number 2, press the Tab key, and chapter 2 is actually going to begin on page 8. So here I have a simplified table of contents using tab settings in order to make that happen. The next thing we're going to do is add a watermark to this document. What a watermark does is it places a piece of text behind the main document. Sometimes you'll see it in different movies and stuff where it'll say top secret or confidential or something along those lines, but it'll be stamped across, usually diagonally across the page. Let's take a look how to do something like this. If you will, please click on the Design tab of your ribbon. Click on Design, and on the Design tab, you may remember this is where we dealt with themes and style sets. There is also a button that does watermarks, and if you click on Watermark, you will see a bunch of preset watermarks already available. Let's use the confidential watermark, and what that should do is that will place the word confidential diagonally on the screen. Now, in the classroom, some of you may be looking and saying, but Mr. Miller, I don't see the confidential here. I did what you said. Some of the computer screens make it difficult to see that watermark. Let's make one small change that should make it visible to everyone. Let's go back to Watermark and come down to Custom Watermark. By the way, if you can't see it, if you did print the document, you would see it fine. It's purely an on-screen thing that is the issue. What we're going to do to make sure that everyone can see it on their computer screen is we're going to change the color. Instead of making it this gray color, let's change this to red. When you click OK, that watermark should appear as a faded out red, which should then be visible to everybody in the classroom. We're going to go ahead and save this file, and then you can close this file, and then we need to go back to our book for the last section of this chapter, or this lesson. Back at our book, the next file we want to open is actually on page 126. So I'm going to advance to page 126 by clicking up here, typing in 126, pressing the Enter key. Toward the bottom of this page, you'll see the topic Creating an Envelope. We're going to open this doc file right here. Once again, I do want to enable the editing. We wish to save this to today's date, so I'm going to do a File, Save As. I'm going to click on today's date. The file already has a name. We're going to go ahead and type in my initials at the end of that file name. In this lesson, we're going to do a couple items relating to inserting a date and then using the address that's already pre-typed to create an envelope. Let's deal with the date issue. The date of this letter currently states February 18th, 2014. I want to update this to today's date. Now before you start typing, let's show you a quick way to put in today's date. With the date selected, we're going to go to the Insert tab, Insert, and there is a button that lets us put in the date and time. So I click on Date and Time. I choose the format I wish to use. I'm going to pick the September 5th, 2015. Yours might say September 8th, September 9th, depending on the day that it might be. Click OK, and that will replace the date. Now, I should have a space, a line in between these two, so I'm going to press the Enter key to go ahead and place that line between the date and where it says Certified Mail. The address that appears down here is a generic address, and at the bottom says City and State. Let's double click on the word City, and we'll type in Riviera Beach. And where it says State, we're going to type in Florida, capital F, capital L. What I want to do is I want to create an envelope. And this address right here to Mr. Lopez is going to be the address that should appear on the envelope. So rather than retyping the entire address, what we can do is simply select the address here in the envelope. Select the address here in the letter. The place where we go to create the envelope is in the Mailings tab on the ribbon. So clicking on Mailings, we're going to click on the option that says Envelopes. When we click on Envelopes, a dialog box will open. And notice that the address that we are sending this to already has been pre-filled. That's because it was selected before we clicked on Envelopes. This address is going to appear right here on the envelope. What we need to do is we need to type in the return address, which is what appears up top here. If you will, please type in your name in the return address, and we'll put in the school's address. So after your name, press the Enter key. The second line of the address is the street address, so we're going to type in 251 West 11th Street, 251 West 11th Street. We press the Enter key again, and now we're going to type in the city, the state, and the zip. So I'm going to type in Riviera Beach, comma, capital F, capital L, space, and then the zip code, 33404. This is the correct way to format an address. The name goes on the first line, the street address goes on the second line, and then the city, state, and zip goes on the third line. If there is an apartment number, sometimes that will go on the end of the second line, or some people will put it in between the second and what would be the fourth line. At this point, we're ready to create the envelope. So what we're going to do is we are going to add, rather than print this envelope, I don't want to use paper right now, so we're going to add this envelope to our document. So I click on Add to Document. Do you want to save? This is saving that return address so you don't have to type it every time. Go ahead and say yes. You should now see the return address appearing in the top left corner and the address of where it's going appearing in the middle. In this lesson, we looked at how to adjust indent settings. We indented several paragraphs. We took a look at adding tab settings and adjusting those settings. We looked at the left tab, the center tab, the right tab, in the bar tab. Something not listed here is we also dealt with tab leaders as well. We added a watermark to our document through the Design tab. And then finally, we showed you how to create an envelope from a letter so that you don't have to retype the entire address.